August 3, 1942, Washington, D.C., inside the hallowed halls of the United States Treasury building. Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Nichols walked briskly into the office of Undersecretary Daniel Bell, carrying a request so astonishing that it could have been mistaken for madness. Nichols, a young but determined officer, did not hesitate. He needed metal, not just a little, not for coins or war medals. This was something far stranger, far more consequential. He needed tons of silver, thousands of tons from the American people's own reserves, for a project so secret that even its existence could not be fully revealed. Bell leaned back in his chair, blinking in disbelief. "How much do you need?" he asked cautiously, expecting perhaps a few hundred tons at most. Nichols replied without hesitation, 6,000 tons. The room fell silent. Bell's face hardened, a mixture of shock and incredulity crossing his features. 6,000 tons? And how many troy ounces is that? Nichols paused. He had no idea. The conversion between tons and troy ounces was irrelevant to him. What mattered was the urgent, impossible task at hand. "I don't know how many troy ounces we need," he admitted, "but I know we need 6,000 tons. That is a definite quantity. What difference does it make how we express the amount?" Bell leaned forward, the intensity of the moment pressing against the walls of the office. "Young man," he said, his voice sharp, "you may think in tons, but the Treasury will always think in troy ounces." What Nichols could not reveal was the staggering truth. This silver was not for coins, not for currency, not for any ordinary purpose. It was destined to power a machine capable of separating uranium atoms, a machine that could change the course of the war and the world itself. And, as the weeks unfolded, the number would not remain 6,000 tons. The Manhattan Project would eventually borrow 14,700 tons of silver, worth over $300 million in 1942, nearly $6 billion today, from the American people to build magnets the size of houses, magnets that would make possible the first atomic bomb. This was the story of the Calutron. A desperate, brilliant, and unprecedented engineering solution to one of the most impossible problems ever faced. How do you separate uranium-235 from uranium-238 when they are almost chemically identical? The answer would come from science, ingenuity, and the hands of ordinary Americans who would unknowingly shape history. The challenge facing the Manhattan Project in 1942 was nothing short of monumental. Scientists knew that uranium-235 held the key to the world's most devastating weapon, the atomic bomb. When a neutron struck a uranium-235 nucleus, it split apart in a chain reaction, releasing unimaginable energy and more neutrons to continue the process. But there was a problem that seemed insurmountable. Natural uranium contains only 0.72% uranium-235, while the remaining 99.28% is uranium-238, an isotope that cannot sustain a chain reaction. To build a bomb, the uranium had to be enriched to at least 90% uranium-235, an almost impossible feat. The challenge was even more astonishing, because uranium-235 and uranium-238 are chemically identical. They have the same number of protons, the same number of electrons, the same chemical properties. The only difference lies in 3 neutrons. Uranium-238 has 146. Uranium-235 has 143. That tiny difference in atomic mass separated a harmless metal from the most powerful, explosive material ever created. Multiple approaches were considered to exploit this minuscule difference on an industrial scale. Gaseous diffusion, thermal diffusion, and centrifuges all promised possibilities, but faced enormous technical hurdles. None were guaranteed to work in time to impact the outcome of World War II. Then came Ernest Lawrence, a physicist at the University of California, Berkeley, renowned for inventing the cyclotron, a circular particle accelerator. In 1941, British physicist Mark Oliphant visited Lawrence and revealed that Britain's atomic program had determined an atomic bomb was feasible, but time was running out. Lawrence needed a solution. Fast. The answer, improbable as it seemed, came from magnetism. If uranium could be ionized, charged, and fired through a powerful magnetic field, the slight mass difference between uranium isotopes could separate them. This idea, simple in theory but audacious in practice, would eventually give birth to the Calutron, a machine that would transform impossibility into reality. Lawrence's idea of electromagnetic separation was bold, almost reckless, but it had to work. In 1941, just 5 days before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the first prototype of the Calutron was switched on at Berkeley. The principle was deceptively simple. Ionize uranium, accelerate the ions through a vacuum, and deflect them with an intense Magnetic field. Lighter uranium-235 ions would curve more sharply than their heavier uranium-238 counterparts, allowing the isotopes to be collected separately. What Lawrence could not yet know was whether this method could be scaled to the industrial level needed to fuel a bomb. The first results, however, were promising. By January 1942, the Calutron had produced 18 micrograms of uranium enriched to 25%, 10 times more than any previous method. The proof of principle was clear, but the gap between a laboratory experiment and kilograms of weapons-grade uranium was vast. To achieve this, hundreds of massive Calutrons would need to be built, each powered by magnets enormous enough to fill entire rooms. And magnets of that size required copper wiring, the finest conductor of electricity known. Here the project hit a staggering obstacle. Copper was in critically short supply. The war effort had drained every available source. Ships, tanks, aircraft, ammunition, all demanded copper. The Manhattan Project could not compete. If they could not find an alternative, the Calutron plan would collapse before it even began. Enter silver, an unlikely hero. Silver is actually a better conductor than copper, and an 11-to-10 ratio meant that a slightly larger quantity could replace copper entirely. But finding 5,500 tons of silver in the middle of a world war was no small feat. The solution came from the unlikeliest of places. The United States Treasury, which held enormous reserves of bullion at West Point. Each bar, weighing 1,000 troy ounces, glinted like treasure in the vaults, awaiting a purpose far greater than backing currency. Nichols, along with Colonel James Marshall, carefully approached the Treasury. The conversation with Undersecretary Daniel Bell is almost legendary. Nichols requested 6,000 tons of silver, only to be asked, bafflingly, how many troy ounces that represented. Nichols admitted he did not know. Bell, balancing incredulity with duty, reminded him, "Young man, you may think in tons, but the Treasury always thinks in troy ounces." Approval was granted, but with strict accountability. The silver would be weighed, guarded, and carefully tracked. As the Manhattan Project's ambitions grew, so too did the request. Eventually, 14,700 tons of silver, worth over $300 million in 1942, would be loaned nearly $6 billion today. Every ounce became part of a chain of logistics more complex than any battlefield maneuver. Transported under armed guard, melted into billets, extruded into long strips, and sent to factories for winding into magnet coils. Meanwhile, Lawrence's team faced countless engineering hurdles. Vacuum tanks weighing 14 tons shifted under the strain of magnetic forces. Heat from ion beams threatened to melt delicate components. Dust, debris, and moisture caused shorts and misalignments. Every problem required creative, painstaking solutions: water, cooling, precise cleaning, meticulous recovery of silver filings, even ripping up floors to collect microscopic traces of metal. The stakes were astronomical. If the Calutrons failed, the world might never see an American atomic bomb. And yet, every step, every decision brought the impossible closer to reality. The first Alpha racetrack would soon be operational, and with it, the WWII plant at Oak Ridge, Tennessee would rise as the theater where science, secrecy, and extraordinary human effort collided to change the course of history. By early 1944, the WWII plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, had become a sprawling industrial fortress. Covering 825 acres in the secluded Bear Creek Valley, the site was chosen for its natural isolation, shielding workers and nearby communities from potential nuclear accidents. Here, the dreams of scientists and the daring calculations of engineers were about to collide with one of the most audacious industrial projects ever attempted: the mass production of enriched uranium using Calutrons. The Calutrons were arranged in racetracks, enormous oval configurations where multiple tanks and magnetic coils formed a mechanical symphony of atomic precision. Each tank contained uranium tetrachloride, heated and ionized, then accelerated through a vacuum chamber. The massive silver wound magnets bent the ion beams with meticulous accuracy. Uranium-238, heavier by just 3 neutrons, curved less. Uranium-235, lighter, curved more, striking carefully positioned collectors. Every inch of alignment mattered. A shift of a fraction of an inch could ruin weeks of work. Yet, the technological marvel was only part of the story. The human element was equally extraordinary. Thousands of workers, many young women from the surrounding rural areas, operated the machines under the banner of Tennessee Eastmen. Most had only high school educations. Many were barely out of their teens. These women, later called the Calutron girls, sat at control panels day and night, monitoring dozens of dials, switches, and gauges. Their mission was deceptively simple: Keep the needles in the green zone. Dial A had to remain within a range. Adjust knob B if a fluctuation occurred, and never question the purpose. For security reasons, they were told nothing. No mention of uranium, isotopes, or bombs. They were trained like soldiers, instructed to execute without reasoning why. The irony was profound. These unassuming women, unaware of the atomic stakes, outperformed the very physicists who designed the machines. Ernest Lawrence himself witnessed the results and was forced to admit that procedure and discipline, not understanding, had become the driving force behind the success. Scientists spent hours theorizing, adjusting, and overthinking, while the Calutron girls simply executed. The challenges were relentless. Magnetic coils twisted under heat and force. Vacuum tanks required constant realignment, and minute particles of dust, dubbed gunk by engineers, threatened to scatter uranium ions. Water cooling systems were installed. Cleaning procedures became ritualistic, and every silver filament, every stray shaving had to be recovered. Precision and accountability were mandatory because the silver was borrowed from the Treasury itself, thousands of tons worth billions today. Every error could cost the project millions and endanger the possibility of completing the bomb in time. Yet, against staggering odds, the Alpha racetracks achieved operational status. Uranium enrichment progressed. The Beta racetracks took partially enriched uranium and pushed it to weapons-grade 90% purity. The impossible was being realized. The Oak Ridge plant had transformed from a concept on paper to a living, breathing engine of the Manhattan Project, where human skill and industrial might intersected to change the course of history forever. While the colossal machines hummed and sparks flew from silver-wound coils, the true heartbeat of Oak Ridge was not the magnets nor the racetracks, but the Calutron girls, the thousands of young women who operated the controls with unwavering precision. Each day, they sat before panels covered in dials, switches, and gauges, shifting levers, turning knobs, and logging every reading. Their mission was deceptively simple: keep the needles in the green zone, no matter what. But the consequences of a lapse were anything but trivial. One misalignment, one overlooked fluctuation, could ruin the uranium enrichment for an entire shift. These young women worked in shifts that spanned 24 hours a day, ensuring that the Calutrons ran continuously. Many had no idea what uranium even was. They didn't know that their efforts were producing the critical material for the world's first atomic bomb. They were not scientists nor engineers, but executors of a complex system that required discipline, attention to detail, and absolute consistency. The contrast between them and the physicists operating the machines was striking. Scientists would often pause to theorize, troubleshoot, and experiment whenever a dial shifted. Their need to understand caused delays, despite their superior knowledge. The Calutron girls, trained to follow procedure without questioning, simply adjusted the dials and moved on. In an ironic twist of efficiency, ignorance became their greatest advantage. Execution mattered more than comprehension, and in this unique environment, it became the key to victory. Every day at Oak Ridge presented new challenges. The vacuum tanks, weighing 14 tons each, sometimes drifted from their precise alignment. Magnetic forces twisted coils, and the intense heat of ion beams threatened to melt collectors. Engineers developed water cooling systems, rigorous cleaning protocols, and meticulous silver recovery methods. Even the floors beneath the machinery were ripped up and burned to retrieve microscopic traces of silver that could not be wasted. The stakes were monumental. 14,700 tons of Treasury silver, worth nearly $6 billion in today's currency, were being transformed into magnets that powered the Calutrons. Every ounce counted. Amid the mechanical chaos, the women remained steady. Their fingers adjusted knobs with the precision of a surgeon. Their eyes scanned the dials with unerring focus. Shift after shift, day after day, the Calutron girls maintained the operation, quietly outproducing the trained scientists who had designed the machines. Their work was unnoticed by the public, uncelebrated by history, yet they were the hidden hands shaping the outcome of World War II. The Oak Ridge plant was no ordinary factory. It was a crucible of secrecy, engineering brilliance, and human endurance. Here, ordinary young women became the linchpins of a project that would alter the course of history. Without the relentless attention, discipline, and silent heroism of the Calutron girls, the Manhattan Project would have faced delays that might have changed the very outcome of the war. The real power of Oak Ridge was not only in science nor in silver, but in the quiet, extraordinary execution of human determination. By mid-1945, the Oak Ridge WWII plant had achieved what once seemed impossible. The Calutrons, guided by the unwavering hands of the Calutron girls, had produced enough weapons-grade uranium to fuel an atomic bomb. Months of precise adjustments, meticulous recovery of silver, and tireless monitoring had culminated in a single, critical milestone. 64 kilograms of uranium enriched to approximately 80% uranium-235, ready for deployment. The uranium, extracted from the racetracks with painstaking care, was transported to Los Alamos, where scientists and engineers finalized the construction of Little Boy, the gun-type atomic bomb destined for Hiroshima. It was the product of unparalleled engineering, innovation, and human diligence. The Oak Ridge operation had proven that industrial-scale electromagnetic separation was feasible, a testament to both the brilliance of Lawrence's concept and the disciplined execution by thousands of workers who had never seen the full picture. The impact of Oak Ridge was immediate and profound. On August 6, 1945, Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima, releasing energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The city was devastated. 5 square miles reduced to rubble, and an estimated 70,000 lives were lost instantly. 3 days later, the plutonium bomb Fat Man followed on Nagasaki. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, ending World War II. The contributions of Oak Ridge, often hidden in secrecy, were a critical component of this historic conclusion. But the story did not end with victory. The massive loan of 14,700 tons of Treasury silver, which had been essential to the success of the Calutrons, now required careful accounting. Every coil, strip, and filament had to be disassembled, cleaned, and weighed. Procedures were developed to recover microscopic traces of silver embedded in floors, equipment, and machinery. The responsibility weighed heavily on Kenneth Nichols and the engineering teams. 1 ounce loss could have been seen as a failure, yet after exhaustive recovery efforts, only 155,645.39 troy ounces were missing, less than 0.036% of the total. The Treasury, reassured, accepted this tiny loss as a remarkable achievement in wartime logistics. In the aftermath, the electromagnetic separation process was gradually abandoned in favor of gaseous diffusion, a more efficient method for large-scale uranium enrichment. The Calutrons were dismantled, the racetracks cleared, and Oak Ridge transitioned into a new era, leaving behind the story of silver, sacrifice, and extraordinary execution. The WWII facility, though transformed, still stands today as the WWII National Security Complex, responsible for maintaining components for the United States nuclear arsenal. Its history is a testament to ingenuity under pressure and the hidden heroes of war. The young women, engineers, and scientists who solved impossible problems with limited resources. The Calutron story illustrates a timeless lesson. Innovation is nothing without execution. Knowledge alone could not have separated uranium or built the atomic bomb. It was the combined effort of brains, hands, and meticulous discipline that changed history. The silent heroism of the Calutron girls, paired with the audacity of scientists like Lawrence, ensured that one of humanity's most dangerous inventions came into being on schedule, altering the course of World War II and the future of global warfare forever. By early 1945, Oak Ridge was a beehive of relentless activity. The WWII plant, with its sprawling racetracks and mammoth silver wound magnets, was running at full capacity. Every alpha and beta racetrack was operating around the clock, producing uranium-235 at a pace that had once seemed unimaginable. The stakes could not have been higher. The fate of the war depended on the timely production of a single, critical material. The engineers and Calutron girls faced extraordinary pressure. Machines groaned under the strain, magnetic fields twisted coils, and the vacuum tanks threatened to misalign at any moment. Tiny particles of debris, gunk, as the workers called it, condensed inside the vacuum chambers, threatening to scatter uranium ions and ruin hours of enrichment. Each day, the teams worked tirelessly to maintain microscopic tolerances, knowing that a single error could derail the Manhattan Project. Meanwhile, the Calutron girls continued their astonishing work. Their hands moved with surgical precision, guided by dials and green zones. They had learned to respond instinctively to fluctuations, their eyes scanning panels and gauges like seasoned conductors orchestrating an industrial symphony. No one questioned the purpose, they simply executed. And in doing so, they outperformed the scientists who designed the machines. The efficiency of the women operators had become legendary, a quiet miracle in the heart of Oak Ridge. Amid the human effort, the silver magnets, borrowed from the U.S. Treasury, remained a constant concern. Each coil weighed tons, its integrity vital for bending the uranium ions precisely along their paths. Any mishandling could mean loss of expensive silver and wasted production time. To prevent this, engineers developed elaborate procedures for cleaning, aligning, and repairing magnets while maintaining full operational efficiency. Every ounce of silver mattered, and every ounce had to be accounted for. The urgency of wartime production intensified the atmosphere. The Manhattan Project leadership knew that the bomb's success depended not just on theoretical physics but on flawless industrial execution. Delays could cost lives and prolong the war. At Oak Ridge, failure was not an option. The plant's vast network of racetracks became a mechanical battlefield. Each ion beam a skirmish against chaos, misalignment, and time itself. And yet, against all odds, the operation succeeded. Uranium-235 flowed from alpha to beta racetracks with increasing purity. The racetracks were synchronized like clockwork, the machines performing at their mechanical limits. By spring 1945, Oak Ridge had produced enough enriched uranium to assemble the bomb components needed for Hiroshima. The impossible task of industrial-scale electromagnetic separation had been accomplished, a triumph of planning, ingenuity, and human endurance under pressure. The climax at Oak Ridge was not a single dramatic moment but a sustained crescendo. Machines, metals, and meticulous human labor converged to deliver history-altering results. The Calutron girls, engineers, and scientists together had turned a daring concept into tangible reality, producing the material that would end the deadliest war in human history. As the spring of 1945 unfolded, Oak Ridge was a place of relentless precision and quiet tension. The massive Calutrons, humming and glowing, had become the lifeblood of the Manhattan Project, each racetrack a vital artery delivering uranium-235 at unprecedented rates. But beneath the mechanical roar, the human element carried the weight of history. The Calutron girls, now seasoned veterans of the control panels, were more than operators. They were custodians of the atomic future, guiding ions with hands that trembled at no error and eyes that missed nothing. Each day, they adjusted dials, monitored gauges, and recorded data, their actions precise, almost instinctive. The work required absolute focus. One lapse could misalign the ion beam, ruin enriched uranium, or waste silver worth millions. Yet, despite the pressure, these young women remained steadfast, their commitment unbroken. They did not know the full scope of their contribution. They were not told about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or the destructive power of the material flowing under their control. They were trained to execute, not to understand, and in that execution, they became heroes. The engineers, physicists, and supervisors watched this perfect synchronization of human and machine with awe. Kenneth Nichols meticulously tracked the silver, ensuring every troy ounce was accounted for. Even the tiniest loss was unacceptable, as the Treasury's trust hung in the balance. From the moment the silver left the West Point Bullion Depository to its final form in the Oak Ridge racetracks, every step was monitored, every action precise, every ounce guarded. The responsibility was immense, yet the teams delivered. As the final enriched uranium was processed, Oak Ridge became a crucible of anticipation. The material was carefully transported to Los Alamos, where assembly teams began integrating it into the first atomic bomb. The realization of what had been accomplished gradually seeped through the ranks. Though the Calutron girls did not know the full story, whispers and subtle hints suggested the magnitude of their work. They were part of something extraordinary, though its scale and consequences were beyond comprehension. The rehook at Oak Ridge was as much emotional as it was operational. Engineers, scientists, and operators felt the weight of history pressing upon them. They had transformed raw uranium into the most powerful weapon ever conceived. They had taken a theoretical principle, scaled it to industrial proportions, and executed it with unprecedented precision. The combined efforts of silver, machinery, and human diligence had produced a tool that could end a global war. Yet there was an underlying tension. Even as the uranium flowed and production goals were met, the questions remained: would it work as intended? Could this weapon achieve the unimaginable destruction envisioned by its creators? The pressure to perform flawlessly was not only technical, it was moral, ethical, and profoundly human. Every dial turned, every ion guided, and every troy ounce of silver used brought the project closer to its climactic test. Oak Ridge had reached the final moments of its operation. The racetracks were running at peak efficiency, the Calutron girls were executing perfectly, and the uranium-235 was ready. History was poised on the edge of a single monumental decision, and Oak Ridge had delivered on every promise, every expectation, every painstaking calculation. The world was about to change, and the silent heroes of Tennessee had been the unseen hands shaping that change. After Hiroshima, on August 6, 1945, and Nagasaki on August 9th, the world witnessed the devastating power of the atomic bomb. The war ended just days later on August 15th with Japan's surrender. For Oak Ridge, the immediate mission was complete. The Calutrons had performed flawlessly. The uranium-235 produced had fulfilled its grim purpose, and the war that had driven the United States into total mobilization was over. Yet, victory brought with it a new challenge. The accounting of 14,700 tons of Treasury silver, the massive resource that had made Oak Ridge possible. Every coil, every strip, every troy ounce of silver now had to be traced, recovered, and returned. Teams meticulously dismantled the racetracks, unwinding the enormous coils, cleaning each component, and collecting every fragment of silver. Floorboards were lifted, equipment scrubbed, and microscopic filings recovered. The operation demanded the same precision, patience, and discipline that had guided production. The responsibility was immense, but after months of painstaking work, Oak Ridge succeeded. Out of 430 million troy ounces loaned, only 155,645.39 ounces were lost, less than 0.036%. The Treasury deemed this an extraordinary achievement, a testament to wartime planning and operational excellence. The legacy of Oak Ridge extended far beyond silver accounting. The Calutron girls, many of them high school graduates, had executed one of the most critical operations of World War II without fully understanding the magnitude of their work. Their unwavering attention to detail and disciplined execution had outperformed even the scientists who had designed the machines. Their story became a lesson in the value of execution over understanding, and in how ordinary people, when properly trained and trusted, could accomplish extraordinary feats. Oak Ridge itself transformed into a center of ongoing national security and technological innovation. The WWII National Security Complex now continues to maintain components for the United States nuclear arsenal, a lasting reminder of the engineering, organization, and human effort that went into the Manhattan Project. The principles behind the Calutron, electromagnetic separation, and mass spectrometry live on in science and industry, applied in medical research, space exploration, environmental monitoring, and forensic analysis. But perhaps the most profound impact was philosophical. Oak Ridge and its Calutron girls demonstrated that war and innovation are inseparable, and that victory often hinges on ingenuity, discipline, and the quiet heroism of individuals working behind the scenes. The silver, once considered just a reserve of wealth, had been transformed into a tool of unimaginable power. The lessons learned about resourcefulness, accountability, and the collaboration between science and labor remain relevant in every high-stakes technological endeavor. In the end, Oak Ridge stands as both a triumph of engineering and a testament to human endurance. Its story is one of audacity, precision, and the delicate balance of secrecy and trust. The success of the Manhattan Project owed as much to the invisible hands of young women, meticulous engineers, and bold scientists as it did to the colossal silver magnates themselves. Together, they had not only changed the outcome of World War II, but had reshaped the very course of human history. With the end of World War II, the immense machinery of the Manhattan Project at Oak Ridge began to wind down, its purpose fulfilled. But its legacy just beginning. The Calutrons, once the heart of a high-stakes race against time, were gradually dismantled. Engineers carefully unbolted the massive silver wound magnets, removed the coils, and ensured that every component could be accounted for. The operation was labor-intensive and meticulous, as accountability for the 14,700 tons of Treasury silver remained paramount. Workers scraped floors, recovered filings, and cleaned every surface touched by the precious metal. Each coil was unwound and inventoried with military precision. After years of intense effort, nearly all the silver was returned, with only a negligible fraction, less than 0.036%, permanently lost to the process. The Treasury's confidence had been fully justified, and the enormous financial risk of loaning the nation's silver reserves had been managed with impeccable precision. By May 1970, the final pieces of silver were exchanged for copper and returned, nearly 3 decades after the initial loan, closing a remarkable chapter of fiscal and engineering accountability. But beyond material recovery, Oak Ridge faced a subtler reckoning. For the thousands of Calutron girls, the reality of their role in history only gradually became clear. Many had gone decades without understanding the full consequences of their work. Learning that their careful hands had helped produce the bomb that ended World War II brought mixed emotions. Pride, awe, and, for some, a haunting awareness of the human cost of their efforts. They had been invisible participants in a story of profound global consequence. A reminder of how ordinary individuals can shape extraordinary outcomes without recognition. The Manhattan Project itself entered the annals of history as a story of innovation, secrecy, and human ingenuity under pressure. Oak Ridge stood as a testament to what could be achieved when brilliant minds were paired with disciplined execution. The success of the Calutrons, while eventually replaced by gaseous diffusion for efficiency, proved that large-scale electromagnetic separation was not only feasible but could be conducted under extraordinary constraints, using resources no one imagined possible, ethically and politically. The fallout of Oak Ridge extended far beyond silver and machines. The work completed there had altered the global balance of power, introduced the nuclear age, and sparked debates that continue to this day about the morality of atomic weapons. Oak Ridge, once a hidden fortress of wartime production, became symbolic of the intersection of technology, secrecy, and human responsibility. It underscored that wartime innovation is often a double-edged sword, capable of ensuring victory while leaving a legacy of immense ethical dilemmas. Today, the WWII National Security Complex remains operational, maintaining the United States' nuclear stockpile and serving as a living monument to the ingenuity and discipline of the men and women who built it. The Calutron girls and the engineers of Oak Ridge are remembered not only for their technical achievements but for the unseen courage and dedication they brought to one of the most consequential projects in human history. Their work reminds us that behind every monumental achievement are countless individuals whose quiet excellence changes the course of events, often without applause or recognition. Oak Ridge's story, the Calutron girls' legacy, and the silver that made it all possible continue to echo through history. A reminder of both human capability and the profound responsibility that comes with wielding scientific power. It is a tale of risk, ingenuity, and accountability, a story where ordinary people were entrusted with extraordinary power and delivered beyond expectation. The story of the Calutron, the 14,700 tons of silver, and the young women who operated the control panels is more than a tale of wartime ingenuity. It is a testament to human resourcefulness, discipline, and courage under pressure. Oak Ridge transformed theory into reality, turning a daring scientific concept into the decisive force that helped end World War II. Every troy ounce of silver, every dial adjusted by the Calutron girls, and every engineer's calculation contributed to a project that reshaped history. Yet, beyond the machines and metals, the true legacy lies in the people. The Calutron girls, the engineers, and the scientists exemplified precision, dedication, and teamwork. They demonstrated that understanding alone is not enough. Execution, diligence, and trust in human capability are equally essential. Their story reminds us that history is made not only by leaders and inventors, but also by ordinary individuals performing extraordinary work behind the scenes. The Oak Ridge facility still stands today, a symbol of innovation, secrecy, and accountability, where lessons learned from the Manhattan Project continue to inform scientific and technological endeavors. The Calutron may have been retired and the silver returned, but the principles it pioneered, electromagnetic separation, mass spectrometry, and disciplined process execution, live on in laboratories, industries, and scientific research across the globe. In reflecting on Oak Ridge, one cannot ignore the profound responsibility that comes with wielding such power. The story of the Calutron is a reminder that human ingenuity can create tools capable of both immense good and devastating destruction. It is a tale of bravery, precision, and ethical reflection, a narrative of ordinary people entrusted with extraordinary responsibility, rising to meet the challenge and leaving an indelible mark on history. The Calutron secret is not just about silver or uranium. It is about the intersection of science, courage, and humanity, and how even the smallest actions, executed with care and dedication, can change the world forever.